Sara Saedi was born in Tehran, Iran. She moved with her family to the Bay Area after the Islamic Revolution during the Iranian-Iraqi War.
My whole life, really, essentially, I grew up in the United States.
Earlier, as we were getting to know each other, you talked about loneliness.
So there was always that balance. There was always doing that dance of I feel very Iranian in some regards, and yet
What motivated you to tell this deeply personal story, and how would it complement dreamers who are undocumented across the globe?
I guess the correct terminology, I use undocumented in the book because I think that that is the terminology that most people are familiar with.
How did you find the right tone to discuss sensitive issues like immigration and legal status?
As a writer, it's hard sometimes to write a book that feels too heavy or too sad. Some people don't want to dip into that tone for a long period of time.
Sarah has brings powerful immigrant stories to life.
I've come to terms with the fact that there's a level of fear and anxiety surrounding this issue that does not leave you, that just stays with you in some regards. As I mentioned, I'm a citizen now. I've been a citizen for almost 20 years. The more I talk about my story and my experiences, you had mentioned Americanized. I tried to develop it as a TV show. It didn't end up getting made, and then I've been working on it as a movie, and we'll see what happens there. But there's certain things that I still leave out, that I left out of the book, that I left out of the movie because I'm still scared.
Immigrant Nation, once more, welcome. Today we are speaking to a storyteller at heart. Sara Saedi was born in Tehran, Iran. She moved with her family to the Bay Area after the Islamic Revolution during the Iranian-Iraqi War. Sara has crafted stories before she could even read. That's amazing. And by the age of 8, she had already set her sights on becoming a screenwriter. After a brief detour as a creative executive, she made the leap into writing full-time, penning hit TV shows like iZombie, Pretty Little Liars, Summer School, and Grand Hotel. My daughter would love you. She's also the author of 4 books, including Never Ever, The Lost Kids, and her acclaimed memoir, Americanized, Rebel Without a Green Card, which was twice developed for TV with Reese Witherspoon's Hello Sunshine. Through both television and literature, Sara has brings powerful immigrant stories to life. Join us as we dive into her journey and insights on making it as an immigrant in America. For all you immigrants out there, anything and everything you put your mind and heart is possible. Sara is evidence to that. Please join us as we speak to this amazing individual that has joined us at the Immigrant Nation. Sara, what say you?
Thank you for having me. It's so nice to meet you, and thank you for that lovely introduction. It's really, as I said, this is an issue. Immigration is so near and dear to my heart, especially considering the times we're living in right now. So I'm really happy to be in conversation with you about the topic.
So earlier, as we were getting to know each other, you talked about loneliness. And I believe each and every immigrant, whatever they are or wherever they are migrating to, this is one thing you go through it. I remember my early days when I had migrated to the US, and I would be very lonely because I did not understand the culture as I had seen it on TV. And I did not understand how certain things worked, and the values of the people that I had watched on TV for many years were not the same values that I was seeing in real life. Walk us through what your experience was like, your early days as an immigrant in the US.
No, I had a unique experience in that, or maybe not so unique, in that I was 2 years old when I moved to the United States. So I was born in Tehran, Iran, and we moved to the States, as you said, during the revolution. It was actually, a little bit of time had passed since the revolution and during the Iran-Iraq war. And my parents at that point just were seeing their country change very quickly, and in ways that they didn't necessarily agree with. At the time, they had two daughters, myself and my older sister, who was 5, and they really felt like, if this is the direction that Iran continues to go in, we don't want to raise our girls here. And so we moved to the Bay Area when I was really young. So I have no memories of living in Iran, aside from stories that I've heard from my family. I haven't gone back to Iran. And so we've my whole life, really, essentially, I grew up in the United States. But I was the child of immigrants, and I felt a lot of times, with my friends, with my peer group, who were born in America, whose parents were American, that they couldn't necessarily relate or connect to some of the struggles that I had, because my parents were trying to figure out how much they wanted their children to assimilate to American culture. So there was always that balance. There was always doing that dance of, I feel very Iranian in some regards, and yet I have basically grown up in America, and so I also feel very American in some regards. And how can we bring the two together? How can I satisfy and make my parents and not make them too anxious about their decision to raise us here? But how can I also not feel like a complete outsider with my friends who don't have similar backgrounds to me? So I guess the terminology is code switching, right? You're between you're one way with your family, one way with your friends. And then the interesting thing about all of that is, as you get older, you really regret that you didn't cling to your culture tighter as you were growing up, that oftentimes you were rejecting it because you wanted to fit in. And so I think that's where a lot of the loneliness comes in. I mean, we were very fortunate, Martin, in that we had a lot of family in the Bay Area. We were, my mom's entire side of the family had moved and left Iran roughly around the same time, and we had all settled in the same part of California. There was a period of my life where my aunt lived next door to me, and my other aunt lived down the street from us. And so I feel like it was really important to our family to recreate the community that they had in Iran in America. The downside of that is that our community was pretty insular. We didn't have a lot of friends outside of our aunts and uncles and cousins, especially my parents' generation. They really stayed within, their social circle was very much their family. And we didn't have the internet. So, when I graduated high school in 1998. And so around that time is when the internet really started becoming a tool that we were all using every day. But there was no, as challenging and scary as things are now, I do think that there is such a benefit to, if you are an immigrant or if you are undocumented, there are ways you can communicate with other people who are going through the same thing that you are, that I didn't necessarily have growing up.
That's very interesting. So, listening to what you say and really combining two things. So, hearing how you say and how you relate to your parents' culture, and then reviewing part of your work, it's really, really interesting to both Americans, with or without opportunity. You share your experiences growing up in undocumented Asia. What motivated you to tell this deeply personal story, and how would it complement dreamers who are undocumented across the globe?
That's a great question. It's interesting because I was 13 years old when I found out we didn't have green cards. So just to give your listeners a little background, when we moved to the United States, we initially came on a visitor's visa. So I guess the correct terminology, I use undocumented in the book because I think that is the terminology that most people are familiar with. But we were an overstay, like we stayed past the expiration date of our visa. So we technically entered the company, we entered the country. Sometimes America does feel like a corporation. We entered the country legally and then stayed past our visa. And then at that point, my parents had applied for asylum, for a political asylum. And 2 years into that process, we were following up on the status of our application, and there was apparently no record of our application whatsoever. So we don't know we never found out what happened, how it got lost in the shuffle. And then at that point, we filed to get a green card through my uncle, my mom's older brother. And some people probably know through experience, but this is one of the slowest ways to get a green card is sibling-based migration. So it took between, like I said, I moved to California when I was 2 years old, and I was 20 years old by the time I got a green card. So it was an 18-year process. Some of the mishaps were on our side. Some of it is just how difficult they make things for you. So discovering at 13 that we didn't have green cards and that we couldn't legally live in the United States. At the time, my sister and I didn't even have social security numbers. It was really scary. It was scary because, first of all, as a young kid that age, I didn't even know the ins and outs of immigrating to another country. I just assumed, you can go and you can live anywhere you want. So I didn't even know what a social security number was. And then really my high school experience and my teen years, the shadow of our immigration status loomed over everything. Fear of telling my friends, fear of what if our application gets denied and we get deported? What do we do then? Anxiety over, simple things like, I think I share a story in the book where I was going to visit a close friend that lived in Seattle, and her parents asked my parents, have Sara bring her passport because we'd love to do a little trip to Vancouver while she's visiting. And at that point, my mom had to confess to them, she cannot leave the country. So things like that, where there's just always this feeling of nervousness and anxiety. The reason that I decided to share this story is because it was something my whole life that I really kept a secret. Aside from family members, it was never anything that I told my friends about. When I did finally get a green card, it's a 5-year wait to be a citizen after that. And so when people would ask me, I would always say, I just don't want to give up my Iranian passport, or, I would come up with reasons beyond the fact that, I just got a green card a year ago, so I still have to wait another 4 years. So yeah, it was, and then at a certain point, you get your green card, you become a citizen, you start to feel a little bit more comfortable about talking about the experience because it's now behind you. While you're going through it, I think it's much scarier to talk about it. But then it's behind you and you start sharing with some people, my family was undocumented, or my family didn't have green cards. And, maybe it's because I was born here. I was born in Iran, but I grew up here, that some people are surprised. They have an idea in their head of what an undocumented immigrant sounds like or looks like. And when I noticed that I was telling people and they were intrigued by the story, I thought, maybe I should share this more widely. And then, Trump was running for president the first time, and immigration was such a hot topic. And I just felt like the conversations people were having about immigrants were so outside of my experience. There were so many misconceptions about how challenging it actually is to become a legalized immigrant in this country. And so I started feeling like not only is this story hopefully potentially interesting to some people, but it's also, I think, important. It's important for people who don't know a lot about immigration to get an education about it. And I think it's also important for, kids who are going through it or families that are going through it to see a story of someone who also went through it and the story has a happy ending. So those were really my two motivations for wanting to share the story. And I think for me, the best part is when I do hear from young kids who are either children of immigrants, maybe their parents are undocumented, maybe their grandparents are undocumented, and they don't really share that fact widely among their peer group. And it's and they say, I read your book and I felt like somebody else has gone through what I'm going through right now. So just being able to connect, you were talking about connection earlier, being able to connect with other people by writing about my experience has really been the best part of it.
Sarah, this is why I thought you'd be an amazing person to have the conversation with you because I can just tell from that little rattle in your voice how passionate you are about the struggles of immigrants. And so I would be doing our listeners a disservice if we do not plug you right here because this is where you really stand out. So tell our listeners where they can find you on social media.
Sure, it's interesting you asked because I've been debating with myself about getting off of social media completely, and then it. I mean, it's funny we're talking about immigrating, but like if I'm off of social media, do I even exist to other people anymore? Like we've become so dependent on it. But I am still on Instagram. You can find me at Sara, not Sarah, which is SAAARA, not SARAH. So it's a little bit of a long handle. But yes, I used to be on Twitter or X. I'm not on X anymore. So Instagram is the one I'm still clinging to. But if you look me up in a few months, you might not find me there. But I also have a website.
Listen, go ahead.
Sorry. I'll just mention to you. I also have a website. It's sarasaediwriter.com, and there's contact information there as well.
So I am going to challenge you, Sarah. One,
Okay.
that you and I, at some point, we can take a little hiatus from social media, but we are too essential to the immigrants community that they actually need to reach out once in a while to people like you and I, that we can reassure them that however difficult or insane things may be, that on the other end things can actually work out for you. So you have a unique story, and you talk about hiding behind of what looked like a mirror facade and really existing behind a mirror. You have this shield where you're not really sharing the truth of who you are, and you really want to let that bud out. You want to reveal yourself and say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm passionate about, but I am holding back because my identity is not complete. And we have a lot of Americans, if I may say that are immigrants, if I may say that are beneficiaries of the DACA program, and their youth, they're young.
Mm-hmm.
Today, they're worried, they're concerned that they may not be able to share with their relatives that are here that may end up getting deported, or they may get deported themselves. And so, how would you encourage these individuals that are living with fear of what tomorrow can be for them?
I don't know that this is necessarily encouraging. It might be the opposite, but I have come to terms with the fact that there's a level of fear and anxiety surrounding this issue that does not leave you, that just stays with you in some regards. As I mentioned, I'm a citizen now. I've been a citizen for almost 20 years. But the more I talk about my story and my experiences, you had mentioned Americanized. I tried to develop it as a TV show. It didn't end up getting made, and then I've been working on it as a movie, and we'll see what happens there. But there's certain things that I still leave out, that I left out of the book, that I left out of the movie because I'm still scared. There's certain things that we were trying to figure out how we could work around some issues because of our immigration process and our status. And I still don't want people to know about those things because you still in the back of your mind, like somebody's going to find a piece of paperwork that we filled out wrong and they're going to tell us we need to leave the country. Like there's still some level of anxiety that I think always stays with you. And I think part of it is just accepting that that is not something you can completely get rid of. And then I guess the other answer is that we see a lot of political upheaval, and it ebbs and flows. And right now, I think we're in a period of time where feels very uncertain and very unpredictable and very scary. And hopefully, it will shift the other way. Hopefully, it's going to be that way for the next 4 years, and then hopefully it shifts the other way. I do believe that it's a pendulum and it swings. But it's very scary, and you feel a little bit of a survivor's guilt too. My family is at a place where this experience is behind us, and you see what's happening to other people, and you see the anxiety that people are dealing with day to day, and you feel a little bit of guilt that, like, oh well, I'm okay and I'm here and I'm allowed to live here.
Pegging on your pendulum, I'm probably gonna attempt to throw something out there.
Sure.
That while the president seems to come out and very aggressive toward undocumented immigrants, he's also doing what the Constitution allows him to do. Not forgetting that he is also married to an immigrant. And so I want to imagine that behind the mask of who he is in public, that he has a little bit of compassion toward immigrants, and that he would want for us to continue the American story, but write the American story in the way that it should be written, at least in the parameters that the Constitution allows for immigrants to migrate to America. For this nation has not been built not without immigrants, but with the help of immigrants. And so, if we can switch a little bit of our conversation and really
Of
focus
course.
on what you've been able to achieve, your memoir balances humor with serious topics. How did you find the right tone to discuss sensitive issues like immigration and legal status?
That's a great question. I think that the tone is really just my voice and the way that I go through life. I think that in some ways you have to have a sense of humor about a lot of things that can be difficult to have a sense of humor about. But I think that's about survival. That's how you get through things that are difficult and challenging. But I think also as a writer, you don't want. It's hard sometimes to write a book that feels too heavy or too sad. Some people don't want to dip into that tone for a long period of time. And so I think it was important to me that the book was entertaining, that the book was engaging, especially because, it's not easy to ask a 15-year-old to read a book these days with, the screen addiction that we all have. So it was just important to me that it still felt like entertaining story, that it was, and that's why there's a lot of content in the book that's not just about immigration. Because it was also important to show that, yes, my family was struggling with something that not every family was struggling with, but we also were dealing with a lot of things that every family was dealing with, or every teenager was dealing with. So there's as many stories about, getting my heart broken or having bad acne and feeling insecure and all these things, because I think that is a universal teenage experience. And I think that was a really big part of my story as well. When we did, I believe in the paperback version of Americanized, there is an author's note at the beginning that also explains and acknowledges that getting to be funny and getting to apply a sense of humor to the story was a privilege because, like I said, I had come out the other side of it. And so it was easy to look back on it with a sense of humor. I don't think it would be as easy to have a sense of humor about it if I was in the middle of our immigration process.
Mhm.
There was a lot of tension in my family because of it. There was a lot of resentment from my sister and I because we felt like my parents did things incorrectly, maybe, or maybe if they had done something else, like we wouldn't be going through this. So there was definitely like a lot of moments that weren't funny at all. But yeah, I think as a writer, you want to be engaging and you're hoping that people, one of the best compliments is, oh, it was such an easy read or it was such a fast read. I think that in a way isn't always an easy thing to accomplish.
That's very interesting. So, as a 15-year-old is in this country, they're struggling with what's going on. They're struggling with the identity of who they are. They're probably struggling with acne and other universal things that teenagers go through. When they are looking into your work, and especially if they're looking into Americanized. Oh, and by the way, I hope you're making a lot of progress. Can you please update us on where this is into being developed as a TV show?
Oh yeah, sure. So this, I mean, it feels like a million years ago now, but uh, initially we developed a pilot story for ABC, and it was a great experience all around. Like for those of you who don't know necessarily how you sell a TV show, we went into ABC. We had what's called a pitch, which is basically, here's the story. This is based on my book. Here are the characters. This is why I'm passionate about this. Uh, Talk about trying to be engaging and funny. You really have to hold people's attention. So it's very much a sales pitch. And, the best thing that can happen in these situations is that in the meeting, they tell you they want to buy it. And we were very fortunate that in the meeting, they said, we would like to work on this with you. So that was a huge victory. Of course, when you have a writing career, a lot of times victories are followed by failures or things that don't pan out. So they didn't end up making the show. One of the best parts about it, though, was they still wanted us to pursue casting for the show, because there was a feeling of like, is there enough Iranian talent out there to cast the actors for this show? Well, what we came to find out is, yes, there's so much Iranian talent out there. But personally, for me, it was such a joy to get to watch actors auditioning to play my dad, auditioning to play my mom. And I think that my family got such a kick out of that. And then when it didn't end up at ABC, we redeveloped it for Disney Plus. And I don't know if we would have the same experience today that we did. I think this was about almost 6 years ago now. When we went to Disney Plus and we pitched it, the ABC pilot was very much about the daughter finding out that her family was undocumented and grappling with that. When Disney Plus said to us, we don't want them to be undocumented in the pilot. We don't want to find out that they're undocumented. We want the audience to fall in love with this family and then discover that about them. So as a writer, it's frustrating because you feel like, okay, that means I have to start over. I have to come up with a whole new story. And then personally, it was frustrating because I think a lot of what worked about the ABC pilot and what a lot of people loved about that pilot was it's not every day that you see a story about an undocumented family. And so when you take that element away from it, I don't think it worked as well. And obviously the fear is, oh, you're telling me that now, and then in 6 months you're going to say, do they have to be undocumented at all? Maybe we just don't do that story at all. So it never ended up getting made. But, when you are attached to something, you try and find other ways to make it work. So I decided I'm just going to write it as a movie, and I'm going to write it exactly the way that I want to write it without anyone else's input. And I just finished that recently. So we'll see if that sells or ends up anywhere.
Well, to start, congratulations. That is fascinating to hear. But let's go back to the teenage you and your sister. I'm just curious what your conversations were in your rooms or in your bedroom, looking at each other and thinking, our papers do not allow us to be here, but we want to be here. This is all we know. What were those conversations like? And when did you feel like we finally caught a break?
I think the conversations that we had, we were both nervous. My sister's a very confident, self-assured person, and she always has been. She's always been, to me, fearless. And I always say, we talk a lot about inherited trauma and generational trauma. My mom was pregnant with me during the peak of the revolution and the war. So part of me thinks, oh, maybe and then my much younger brother was born in the United States. I'm the most anxious of the three of us. Maybe that has something to do with I was in the womb during this period of time where things were very scary.
Yeah.
So my sister, I think, is always a pretty calm and confident presence. And unfortunately, I think we took a lot of our angst out on our parents. When we were upset, it was their fault, you know. And there was certainly this feeling of we don't belong, or like, why do they have to make it so hard for us to be here or to want to be here? But no, I never felt, and I really say this as a testament to my parents, I don't think that I was losing sleep every night that we were going to get deported. Like, I have a bunch of journals from my years in high school, and which was great research for writing the book, but I read through them all, and I mention our immigration status maybe 3 or 4 times. You know, so much of it more is focused on drama with my friends or the crush that I had at school, all these like regular teenage things. I mean, I mentioned in the book, like my sister and I didn't always get along too. So like, I don't know how much we were opening up to each other about these things. But she was very much like the older sister figure who had to make the rest of us feel safe and okay. And I think my parents were like that as well. One thing I want to go back and mention, Martin, really quick, as we were talking about the book, and just because of, the mission statement of your podcast, I want to mention that the thing that I was so ashamed of growing up, or that I felt like I needed to keep a secret, has really been probably the most successful thing I've done as a writer, is telling that story. And so it to me, it's such a, writing the book and even developing it as a television show, it was such a full circle moment, because it makes you realize that the thing you were the most ashamed of as a kid is actually, what opened up so many doors for me as an adult. And, you can measure success in that way, but also the success of getting to connect with readers, getting to visit high schools. High schools across the country read Americanized. It's required reading at some schools. Like getting to connect with
Nice.
Yeah, which is, to me, like, that is the best part of all of this is, and especially in these times where you feel a little bit helpless, like is there anything I can do? I'm not doing enough. I can passively donate money, but that doesn't feel like enough. It's just nice to know that at least maybe you're building some sort of a bridge with your story and other people. It's interesting that way, right? The thing we're deeply ashamed of, or the thing that we don't want to tell anyone about, ends up being, once you talk about it, it ends up really, superpower, I think, is too strong of a word, but it does end up being the part of you that
is why we have this conversation, right? This is one thing that at some point I'll sit down and I'm like, I feel like having a little jig, because it's really working out. You delved a little bit about your relationship with you and your sister as teenagers, but you said something really profound that I want you to go back to, and that's the power of journaling, right? Walk us through how journaling allowed you to emotionally relieve yourself and to keep your mind focused on your dreams and the path you wanted to pursue in life.
I started writing a diary from really the age of 10 years old to college. In my 20s. I stopped journaling as an adult. I don't know why. I think life just got a little too busy, or there wasn't as much room for self-reflection, or maybe hopefully I became a little less narcissistic and just didn't have time to focus on myself and my own problems as much. But it is, I recommend it. I'm so grateful to my younger self for documenting my life at that time. But yes, you're right. I think it was cathartic. I think it helped me sort through any challenges and difficulties that I was going through as a young person. It was a space where I could be completely vulnerable. I obviously didn't realize that one day I would be taking excerpts from my journals and putting them in a book. So I could be incredibly honest. So much of actually my journals is just a record of like, we did this weekend, or we went here, we did that, but that's also fun to look back on and read. And then there's a lot of I think one of the things that was most startling about it, going back and reading them, is you discover that, oh, some of the insecurities that I have as a woman in my 40s are the same insecurities I had as a 14-year-old girl. So just trying
And
to,
that interesting.
yeah, it's really, honestly, it's depressing. It's like, why haven't I evolved in the last 30 years at all? And then you also are reading it as though, you identify with the person who wrote it, but you're not that person anymore. So you are also reading it from a place of compassion and sympathy and, sadness that I was as insecure as I was then. So in some ways, it's you're reflecting on this young woman who you wish had more confidence. Who it's that whole age old, like, if you could go back in time, what would you tell your younger self? So it was just, gosh, it was such a helpful tool in terms of timeline with writing the book. But yeah, I think it was so cathartic as a young person. I think that I just, I don't know if it was reading, like Diary of Anne Frank is one of the most famous books out there, and it was something that I read in high school. I don't know if there was this feeling of, like, I mean, my life was obviously nothing compared to what Anne Frank was going through, but the feeling of, I need to write this down. Like, even if it was as mundane as, oh, I really love this TV show, or I just saw this great movie, but just this feeling that, like, life is fleeting and I want to keep a record of what's happening.
So, what I have discovered is good writers are also prolific readers.
Hmm.
And so you've talked about Anne Franklin, and I can't tell you how much her work has changed the person I am. But walk us through your experiences or your relationship with books and how that has contributed toward making you a better individual or a better author or communicator.
I've always loved to read ever since you mentioned in my bio, I used to, as a kid, I had a notebook and I didn't know how to write yet. So I would make these little loops because that's what cursive writing looked like to me. But I would dictate the same exact story, like verbatim, every time. So I think it starts with just being interested in telling stories and reading other people's stories. And I mean, like, growing up, for instance, as a kid, I loved The Babysitter's Club. It was a serialized book about a young group of girls who are babysitters. So that was sort of my way in. Like, I just kind of got hooked on this book series, and then obviously your tastes evolve. But yeah, I've always loved to read. I don't have as much time to read now as I did when I was younger, but my Instagram, for anyone who goes on it, is actually just book recommendations. So yes, you're right. I've been an avid reader. Now it's interesting because now, as a writer, when you're reading with a certain level of professional jealousy, because there's that part of you that feels like, oh, I could never, oh my God, how did this person even, like, form this beautiful sentence? I could never write like this. Or where did the story come from? Or I wish there's a little bit of that monologue going on in your head too. But I think the reason we all love to read is that you get a window into another story, somebody else's life. You either can relate to it or you can't, but I think both versions are so important and beautiful. I talked to a high school a few years ago in a small town in Indiana, and they were expressing to me that it was predominantly white, not a lot of diversity, and they had read Americanized, but they were just really stressing the fact that books and TV shows and movies are really their only resource of connecting with people that are different from them. So I know it's always like, it's windows and mirrors, right? So yeah, I think I started out really as somebody who loved to read other people's stories, and I think that definitely motivated me to try my hand at writing.
Talking about other people's story, how did your family's journey shape your identity into who you are today?
I mean, I think I write about something in the book that I call immigrant child guilt complex, which is just which is this feeling of, I understand, I'm a parent now. I have two kids. I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old boy. And, all parents make sacrifices for their kids, but I would argue that there's nothing like the sacrifices you make for your kids when you immigrate to another country to give them a better life. And I think seeing, as much as there were times where I was frustrated with my parents, seeing everything that they went through to try and give us better opportunities in America was such a huge motivator for me in my life. There was always a voice in my head that said, I don't want them to feel like they did this for nothing. Like I want to do things that are going to validate the decisions that they've made. I want to make them proud so that they feel like they did the right thing by leaving their home behind to give us a better life. So there is the sort of, it's more motivation than guilt, but there's also a little bit of guilt, right? Like I have to do well. There's a work ethic that I think it instills in you that I quite honestly didn't see some of my friends who had a different experience having that same drive and work ethic. And I think now too, like really as an adult and now raising my own kids, I have so much more compassion for the experience that my parents had. As stressful as it was for us as kids, I think it was a million times more stressful for them as parents. They had a lot of guilt. They had a lot of anxiety. And so, yeah, I'm just so grateful to them.
If we can circle back to your memoir,
Mm-hmm.
you've written young adult novels like Never Ever and I Miss You, I Hate
Mm-hmm.
This.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very interesting title, by the way. What draws you to writing for young audiences?
I think, the teenager in me is still very present. And I think that there's a bit of nostalgia for that period of time in your own life. And so it's nice for me to get to revisit it. Americanized was great because it was like a lot of people that have reached out to me about that book weren't immigrants but grew up during the 90s, and so they also felt like, oh, it's so fun, like all of your pop culture references are very much like what I grew up with. I don't know, I am starting to be quite honest, in my 40s now, I am starting to outgrow it a little bit. Like I think my next, if I write another book, I think it'll probably be like more about adult experience. Because you do start to feel a little bit like, well, the older that I get, I'm even more distant from that phase of my life. Maybe when my kids are teenagers, I'll feel like I have a front row seat to what that's like now, and it'll make me want to write about it again. But there's just the stakes feel so high when you're that young, and they're really not, but they feel like they are. And so it's just, it's interesting to re-examine that era.
So, if we can look at the technical part of Sarah, you've worked as a television writer on shows like iZombie, by the way, I loved it, and the upcoming Green Lantern series. How does writing for television differ from writing books, and how do you navigate between the two mediums?
I think it's an amazing balance. I recommend to every, TV writer friend that I have that they try writing a book if they haven't. And then authors that I'm friends with, I recommend them trying to get into television. What I love about TV is that it's super collaborative. The shows that you mentioned, it's like, it's not just me, it's a room full of writers, and we're all bouncing ideas off of each other, and we're all really working together as a team to create something. So I think, it's such a special experience in that way. Green Lantern is funny that you mention it, because I worked on a version of Green Lantern that never got made. And so I think that's the benefit of books, is that it's very rare, in my experience anyway, that you write a book and it just gets shelved and they decide not to publish it. Like, it's a pretty straight line. You work with an editor, you write the book, they help you through it, and then it gets published and the exact date it's going to get published. And it's very, there's not a lot of like surprises. Whereas in TV, you can work on something for a year and a half and then it never even gets made, and then they move on and make it with other people. There's not the same stability, I guess. It's a little bit
Hmm.
inconsistent. Um, so part of the reason that I wanted to have a career as an author was that I feel like it could be more stability as I get older. That you look at writers' room too in Los Angeles, and I don't know that as a 65-year-old woman someday I'm going to be hired to work in a television writers' room, but I think I will definitely still be able to write books because you look at some of the best writers that we have, and a lot of them are older. So I don't think you age out of writing books in the same way that, unfortunately, I think you do age out of writing television, especially as a woman. And so a lot of this, maybe it's the immigrant mentality, but some of this has in my career has been very strategic and thinking about the next 20 years.
So, thinking about the next 20 years, our artificial intelligence is really taking root in our societies,
Yes.
especially when it comes to writing and production. And so, as an Iranian immigrant woman in the marketplace, how are you marrying into new technologies and preparing to keep yourself still relevant in the marketplace and to bring the social changes that you believe in?
I guess the most honest answer to that is that I'm not using AI at all. Actually, I used Chat GPT recently because I wanted to brainstorm a title for something. So I think it's a good tool in that way, but it does really scare me how much people are starting to rely on it for things that we were totally capable of doing on our own. Whether
Hmm.
it's, I'll just share a quick funny story. I was at my son's school for their birthdays. You can come and like read a book about them, and he a shares a birthday with another kid in the class, and the mom read the sweetest, cutest book, and it rhymed, and then I said to her, I'm like, oh my gosh, like that was so cute, and you made it rhyme. And she said, Chat GPT made it rhyme. Which is no shade to her. Like we're all busy. Like you got to do what you got to do. And it was
Yeah.
good. Like we play this fun game with our kids where they give us a topic, and my husband puts it into Chat GPT to write a song, and then we read them the lyrics, and they just think it's hilarious. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't use it that much myself. I mean, there's certainly documents that we have to write in a TV show that are not the most fun. That you're like, maybe we could have AI write this someday. But I don't know. That makes me sad. When there's a lot of AI discussion during the writer's strike, um,
Hmm.
one of the things that I always go back to is that when I am watching a TV show and there's a moment that I feel so moved by, the reason I feel moved by it is because another human being thought of it and executed it. And if you take that element
Yes.
out of it, then I don't think that the content that we create or watch, or the movies and TV shows, and the art we make is going to move us. And that's why we do it. That's why we consume it, and that's why we create it. So I hope that AI doesn't take over this process, but it's certainly moving really fast, and I know a lot of the people in my industry are very scared of it.
I totally believe there is nothing as brilliant as a human mind. And so, while I enjoy and love embracing technology, I want to imagine that the beauty of what we can become now and in the future is our ability to utilize our mind, our talents, and complement that with AI. So I'm not sure AI is here to take away from
Right.
us, but rather to make what we do better than how we could have actually created it. That being said, your work often touches on themes of identity and belonging. What message do you hope to convey to young immigrants facing similar challenges?
I think that hopefully, like my story, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I also think just letting them know that they're not alone, that other people have gone through this before. Um, but also that there's people out there who haven't gone through it at all, but are still really compassionate and supportive. We made buttons when I was promoting my book that said things like "You belong here," child of immigrants, this is what an immigrant looks like. I think just making sure that reading my story makes them feel supported, because when I was going through it, I didn't have a book to read about somebody else that was going through it. So, yeah, I mean, I hope the takeaway is just that this is many families have gone through this. And then I think the other takeaway that's really important is that you're not a bad person. Like even in like that story that I shared about Disney Plus saying, can we take out the fact that they're undocumented? Or there's a lot of stories on TV that you'll notice too when there's an undocumented character that and I mean, it's funny because this was really my story, but that they discover that they're undocumented. That they're like, but sometimes these people are like in their 20s, 30s, and they're like, what, I'm undocumented? Because I think there's a fear that if someone is knowingly undocumented, then the audience is going to reject them or think that they're doing something bad. And I think it's really important that we that we avoid that narrative. And that what we, really try and get across is that people make the choices that they make out of desperation, out of a lack of choice, out of survival, and that it doesn't make them bad people. And I think too, I hope that my book just also reminds people about what immigrants bring to this country, and especially in terms of these sort of notions that like immigrants take our jobs and they don't pay taxes, and these things that are just completely false, that I hope that it changes some misconceptions.
So misconceptions can always be countered by data and facts. And I think the data and the facts out there is plenty to show that most of those of us who've migrated to other countries across the globe, and it's not just an American problem as is, it's just we're self-aware because we're in America, but it's the same problem when you go to Dubai or to Europe, where they may have a little bit of a better control for what the immigration process looks like. But the world has become a global village, and so it's not a question of if, but when. Right? Because we've gotten smaller, travels become much more better. And so we can migrate as much as possible. And just because economies are so much integrated, it becomes easier for us to move from one place to another. I believe if we can really be committed to getting to our goal as an organization and as individuals, as immigrants, that focusing on why we migrate to one place and what we want to do, which is bring social change to the places we've migrated, make our lives and our families' lives better, help those we left behind, and on and on and on. That said, what are some of the legacies that you married from your parents or you created for yourself that you want to leave or influence in the near future?
I just think the importance of family. I think that family was such a big part of our community growing up. And, one of the things that's really been difficult the last few years is seeing the generation that raised myself and my cousins and my siblings get older. I've lost my uncle, who I write about a lot in the book. I've lost, several aunts and uncles over the last couple years. And that was my parents' community. So in some ways now we look back and we think, oh, if they had a broader community, then maybe this phase of life wouldn't be so sad and hard for them. But I'm so grateful that family was such a huge, important part. So just trying to make sure that my kids see their cousins, that my kids have a sense of this big family that I had, even though we don't live near everyone anymore, or we're not always together. We don't see each other the same way that we did with my parents' generation, bringing us all together. But just a real importance of community as your family, and family as your community, if that makes any sense. That has just been, so important to my parents. My sister and I lived in New York City for a period of time, and their attitude was very much like, we didn't bring you all the way here for you guys to move across the country from us. So just proximity can be is important, and I think that that is one of the hardest parts about immigrating is that it takes the proximity away from the people that you love. So I was really grateful that my family ended up pretty much in the same place, and we grew up with this sprawling immigrant community of Iranians. And um, I would just love my kids to have as much of a sense of that as possible.
Sarah, we are delighted that you decided to spend your time and your experiences with the Immigrant Nation community. Thank you so very much for making the time for us. Before we get to a place where we can sign off, can you discuss any upcoming projects or themes you are excited to explore in the future?
Sure. So as I mentioned, I finished writing Americanized as a movie, and I'm really hoping that that ends up getting made someday. If not, I'll probably try writing it as a play. I won't give up on it. And I currently write on a television show called Brilliant Minds, which is on NBC and also Peacock, and it is a medical drama written about, based on a real life doctor named Oliver Sacks, who passed away about 10 years ago. But it's he was a famous neurologist. So the show really focuses on the mind and mental health. And we have actually a really beautiful immigrant story in that as well. So I encourage people to check that out. And yeah, I think you may have convinced me to stay on Instagram, Martin. That was a beautiful argument for why it's important to have social media. So down the road, I'm sure I'll be posting more career endeavors as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Obviously, you are a storyteller at heart. You have created and crafted tales before you were even the age of 8. She has also already declared her dream of becoming a screenwriter and living that dream. For immigrants across the globe that are struggling to find your path, here is a perfect example of what persistence and consistency can do. Continue to dream, continue to pursue your goals. At the Immigrant Nation, we are here to help you get there and support and cheer you. Sarah, please tell our tribe where they can find you again on social
Yeah,
media.
so I'm currently still on Instagram. It's at Sara, not Sarah, which is SaaRanotSarah. And this was such an incredible experience. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. I loved getting to have this conversation with you.
We hope, Sarah, that you can come back again soon. If you're working on a project, please stay in touch with us. We will do the same for you. Would love to collaborate sometime in the future. Again, thank you for making the time for us and welcome again to the Immigrant Nation. Bye bye.